All right, middle school. This is Miss Anderson again. How is everybody doing? Okay, so I am here with our third lesson. It should be Monday when this is posted. I still haven't heard a lot from some of you guys. There was a Native American music lesson that we did, and then there was also the blues that we were supposed to do. And you guys need to fill out a quiz for each one of those. And the quizzes are not hard, but you have to make sure that you do those. Just so I know that you guys are checking this and I know that you guys are present, okay? Because it's still important that you guys check this stuff out. All right. So anyway, this is jazz. This is what we're going to cover today. And jazz is a huge music genre that I would never be able to cover fully. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of an overview again. That's what I'm going to do with most of these genres is I'm giving you guys an overview. But anyway, this is the music genre of jazz. So we're going to get started here. And again, last week I said I was going to make the videos a little bit shorter, and then it ended up being about the same length. So this time, for real, I am going to try to make the video shorter, okay? Cross my fingers. Hopefully it is a little bit shorter. All right, so anyway, jazz. Jazz came out of New Orleans, Louisiana in the early 1900s, and from there spread to Chicago, New York City, especially Harlem, the Harlem neighborhood, if you've ever heard of that, and then to all parts of the USA. Jazz developed from roots in blues and ragtime. So if you did the assignment last week, you should know kind of a lot about the blues, but a lot of jazz developed from that. And blues is still, I messed that sentence up. Blues still plays an important role in jazz today. So there's a lot of aspects of the blues that is still very, very important in jazz today. Going back to the top here, though. So we talked about last week how the blues came out of the Deep South, coming from former slaves that were emancipated, and the culture down there. And jazz, well, when we get down here, I'll talk about that. But that's kind of why it started out down in Louisiana. So they call New Orleans, Louisiana, the birthplace of jazz. And it really is. And even today, if you go down there, there is a ton of music being played all the time on every street that you walk down. Especially there's a place called the French Quarter. And it's kind of a touristy spot. But there is a lot of music, a lot of different kinds of jazz that is played constantly down there. And it's actually very cool. So anyway, back down to here. Jazz developed from roots in blues and ragtime. So we already talked about blues. Ragtime, we're not going to go too far into it, but it's another genre of music that introduced syncopation. So syncopation is... it has to do with the rhythm of the music. So it changes up the rhythm of the music. I'm not going to go super far into that. But if you're interested in what ragtime is, a lot of it is piano music from the early 1900s that it kind of sounded a little jazzy. It was a little bit different than normal classical music that they had. One person that you could look up if you're interested in looking that up is Scott Joplin, and he wrote a lot of ragtime pieces for the piano. And one of his most famous ones was Maple Leaf Rag. So I might actually include that in the links that I also post on Google Classroom, so you can check that out if you want. So blues and ragtime were big influences in jazz. Okay. The 1920s was considered the jazz age, and that is when jazz became very popular in the United States. So the 1920s was a very exciting time. There's a lot of stuff going on. Jazz really took off during that time, okay? A lot of big band stuff, a lot of dancing, all that kind of stuff was happening during the 1920s. Jazz is a fusion of all different cultures, including African American, European, Latin, and so on. There are so many different subgenres of jazz that all have a different sound. Okay, there are many different subgenres of jazz that all have a different sound. But you need to know that jazz is a fusion of a bunch of different cultures. Okay, it is one of the first purely American genres of music because it did come out of all the cultures that that were combined here in the United States at that time, which is kind of a unique thing to our country because there were so many cultures all at the same place, all at the same time, and they kind of collaborated and fused their music together to turn it into something called jazz. All right, so there's different jazz characteristics. So different types of jazz have different characteristics, but these are some of the most common and some of the most important characteristics. The first one, improvisation. So I think we might have talked a little bit about improvisation in music class. I'm not sure if we covered that a ton, but improvisation is composing music or writing music. We're not really writing it, but you're creating music on the spot. Okay. Musicians will have chord changes to look at, but no notes to follow. They will create their own melodies and rhythms on the spot while they're playing. All right. So in a jazz piece, let's say there's a trumpet player and he's playing along and he's got the whole melody written out in front of him. And then he gets to a solo section and all of a sudden there are no more notes for him to follow. And all he has are little letters that are chord changes and he has to follow those, and he creates, or she creates their own melody. It's pretty cool. This takes a lot of practice, knowing what the chord changes mean and using your ears. So improvisation, I think the most important thing is being able to use your ear and being able to play what you hear inside your head. So if any of you have ever like had a keyboard or any other kind of instrument at your house and you've just kind of goofed around on it and kind of come up with your own melody, that's kind of the same as improvisation. You were composing on the spot and you were using your ear for that. So we're going to take a quick look at this video right here. This guy's name is Cat Anderson, and he's going to show us, he's playing with the Duke Ellington Orchestra, Duke Ellington Big Band, but he is going to show us a little bit of what improvisation might sound like. All right. So this guy right here, this is Duke Ellington, and he's the leader of a big band. We're going to talk about him a little bit more coming up, but I'm going to skip over to Cat Anderson, trumpet player, and he's going to improvise a little bit so you can hear what that sounds like. So as you can see, he doesn't have any music in front of him at all, actually. Those chord changes that I was talking about, he probably has them memorized, or he might just purely be using his ear to form these melodies that he's creating. Right here in the bell of the trumpet, you might be wondering, that's called a mute, and that's why the trumpet sounds a little bit different, because it kind of changes the sound of the trumpet. I'm going to play a little bit more. I want you to try to pick out what other instrument you hear in here. So what other instruments do you think you heard behind the trumpet sound? There was a doom 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 doom, that thing right there. That was a bass, like an upright bass, and we'll talk about that too. And then there was also just a little bit of percussions, a little bit of drums. You can hear it. But anyway, that is what improvisation sounds like, and it can be, every improvised solo can sound so different from the next. So We're going to listen to a little bit on the next page. We're going to listen to a little bit more of that, but I just wanted to show you that one. So another jazz characteristic, swing and syncopation. All right, so this has to do with the rhythm of the music, okay? So, so like eighth notes, 16th notes, all that kind of thing. So the rhythm of the music. Emphasis on the offbeat of the rhythm. So we might not know exactly what that means. Right here, you'll see 4 sets of eighth notes. And if we counted them, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? T, 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 T. Okay? And these right here, the first note on each set, that is the main beat, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the other ones behind it, those are the off beats. Okay, so they're kind of emphasizing the offbeat of the rhythms with syncopation. So it might be do 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 do, right? With swing, they are actually going to hold this first note out longer than normal and then make this one short. So it's long, short, long, short. So instead of ta, 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 it's do, ba, do, ba, do, ba, do, ba, do, ba. And it kind of gives it a different feel. So that's something that you would probably not hear in like classical music per se. All right, if you've ever listened to some of that. So it's a little bit different. Do da do da do da do da. That's a very important characteristic. Swing is a very important characteristic of jazz. All right, last one on this page, blues or blue notes, which comes from what we talked about last week, which is the blues. Notes that are changed in a normal scale or chord to give it a bluesy feel. So in regular music, in classical music, right, we have a scale like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? Da, 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 da. But with jazz and a lot of blues, and there's a lot of different kinds of jazz scales, but the blues scale sounds different than the da, 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 da. It sounds a little bit bluesier. So I'm going to, oh, we have an ad. Hold on. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit. I'm just going to skip around here if this ad would finish. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to skip around here so whoever is playing this can play the blues scale for you. All right, so let me turn this up. So remember, our scale for classical music that I just sang was do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and this would be the blues scale. So I want you to listen.
E. Go up 3 semitones.
Hold on, I'm going to skip forward just a little bit.
So the 12-bar blues goes like this. C7 for 4 bars.
Oh gosh. All right, hold on.
F7 for 2 bars. 3. And then finally 2 semitones.
Oh gosh. Okay, hold on just a second. This thing is driving me nuts here. Hopefully this is it.
If we're counting in semitones, it goes 3, 1. If we want to work in on the notes, 3 semitones. 1, 2.
Oh my goodness. Okay, hold on just a second. Bear with me. I thought I knew where it was, but apparently I didn't. And I don't want to start the whole video over. Okay, so I think he's going to play it here. Hopefully, cross your fingers. So if you heard what he's doing in his right hand, he's using that scale, dooba-dooba-dooba-doo, right, that he just played. He played it kind of fast, and now he's using it to improvise. And over here, he's just got chords in his left hand. But I want you to listen to the right hand here one more time.
Riffs you can come up with. Experimenting is definitely the best way to get good at using this scale. So here's an example of the C blues.
So now he's improvising here, just using the notes in that scale. And it sounds hard, but actually if you learn that scale, it's actually not very hard to improvise and make it sound pretty good. All right, anyway, moving on. All right, so common instruments, I made a lot of typos on this one. Common instruments that are used are the trumpets right here, trombone, which is down here, the saxophone. There's different types of saxophones. Percussion, so like a drum set right here. The bass, so an upright bass. Okay, so it looks like a giant violin. Piano or keyboard right here, and guitar. So if you listen to a big band or a big jazz band, those are the main instruments that you are going to see. But there are so many different kinds of jazz, so many different types, that there are other instruments that are used. So I want you just to think, what other instruments can you think of that may be used in jazz? I just want you to think of some ideas. And when I give you guys this quiz, I might ask that on there. And it doesn't have to be right or wrong. I just want you to think of what other instruments you think might possibly be used in some kinds of jazz. So the sections of a jazz band. So a normal jazz band that you see is also called a big band. There's two sections of a jazz band, and it's horns. So that would be the trumpet, which they stand in the back. Then the trombones sit in the middle, and then the saxophones sit up front. Okay, so that's the horns: trumpet, trombone, and the saxophone. And then the rhythm section. Okay, and the rhythm section is one person on the drums, one person on the piano, one person on guitar, and one person on the bass. So there's usually about 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, and 4 saxophones, 1 on drums, 1 on bass, 1 on guitar, and 1 on piano. All right, so we're going to go through here kind of quickly. So I just wanted you to see these different types of jazz. There's different styles of jazz. So the first one is big band or swing. So that's what I was just talking about with the big jazz band. So just take a quick look at this. I want you to look. So this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's actually 5 saxophones here. I want you to look at the instruments that they're playing here and what it sounds like. This is called Take the A Train, which is a very, very famous jazz song. So this is Duke Ellington, very famous jazz artist, piano player. I'm going to skip forward just a little bit so you can see the other instruments here. And this is an old video from 1969. See all these guys right here? So this right here, this whole thing here is the horn section, and then over here you've got the rhythm section. And the rhythm section kind of drives the time, and then the horns play all the melodies and harmonies. Okay, so anyway, even in big bands, when you have all those different players, there's also solo sections where people will stand up and improvise, but we're not going to wait around. I'll put this in the links also that I'm going to send you guys if you want to check it out more. Okay, swing dancing. I just want to show you guys this really quick. Swing dancing was very, very popular back in the day when big band and swing was a popular genre of music. And it's a certain type of dancing. And it's kind of impressive. This is a rather recent video, 2016. But there's a lot of different swing dancing videos you could watch, but I just chose this one because it's kind of cool. But it's a certain type of dancing that they would do to these big band songs, and I just want you to watch because it's kind of cool. It's very fast. It can be very fast. So if you want to watch more of that, I will put that video in the links as well. I just wanted to show you that a little bit. Okay, Dixieland. Dixieland is another type of jazz. from early on. It actually came before a big band. And I'm just going to show you a video quick. It's got a different sound. So there's different instruments involved, a different sound, a different way of doing things. This is the Preservation Hall Jazz Band in New Orleans, and they're a famous group. They've been around forever. And there's all these different instruments. It doesn't have the same setup as a big band. And actually, most of the stuff, besides like the main melody that they play, most of the stuff is improvised. So multiple people might be improvising at the same time. So a lot of these people are improvising all at the same time. Now, if you've ever heard of a New Orleans funeral, they're a lot different than the funerals we have up here. They'll have parades, and there's something called the second line, and the second line is a Dixieland band like this, except they're marching down the street, and they're playing kind of this upbeat music as sort of a celebration of life. Because sometimes when we have funerals, it's very maybe the music that is played is very very sad or slow. And down there, when they do this second line with the Dixieland, it's more of a celebration of life. It's kind of cool. So they have a drummer, saxophone, clarinet. Clarinet is one that we didn't see in the other band. All right, but that's Dixieland, and you'll hear, if you ever go down to New Orleans, you'll hear a lot of that on the street. It's kind of cool. All right, I'm going to go quick here. Bebop is another type of jazz where there's a lot of improvisation, and it can go by really
Music
fast.
Written by Miles Davis.
It can go by really slow. But Miles Davis, he's a very, very important jazz musician. He's a good one to know. He's a trumpet player. He did a lot of bebop. Okay, and that's another genre or type of jazz. So we're just going to listen to a couple seconds here. And he was, I believe, he wasn't really a New Orleans musician. He was more from New York or that Harlem area. Sounds a lot different than the Dixieland we just listened to. It's got a very, very different feel. And it can be really fast. It can be kind of slow, like the one we just heard. Okay, another one, really fast, I just want to show you is funk. This is a fun one. I like this one a lot. Funk has a lot of horns. There's usually a singer. Not all the time, but a lot of funk music has vocalists. This particular band is called Tower of Power, and they've been around forever. They've kind of gone through different musicians and different singers. But they're a funk band, and I just want to show you a couple seconds here of this one. This video is kind of goofy because it's called a Tiny Desk concert, so they're all kind of squished together in this tiny desk. They usually would play at a normal stage. All right, but here is Tower of Power. Well, you can sing a song. So as you can see, there's a lot of brass and a lot of saxophone. So they have back behind the singer, they had that it looks like a keyboard, but it's actually a type of jazz organ right here. So the jazz organ's kind of got a cool sound. And everyone's a star, so but anyway, that's funk. Here's just another one. This is called Snarky Puppy. It's kind of a goofy name, but they're another funk band. Recent funk band. This is from 2019. he's improvising right now. So they're funk, but they've got a little bit of a different sound than Tower of Power, but they're still funk. Lots of horns, lots of improvisation. So anyway, that's another type of funk. I'll put that link in there too if you want to check that out. But all these different types of styles of jazz came about at different years, different decades. So if you want to check out kind of when these came about, you can do that too. But I'm not going to go too far into that because it's going to take a lot of time. So there's funk, there's also cool jazz, there's free jazz, and so many more. So you can check out more of those if you would like to. Okay, last slide. Hopefully I'm not going too long, but the last slide, I just want to list off some famous jazz musicians, and these musicians are from all different times throughout the 1900s. So like early 1900s, like 1910s, 1920s, mostly 1920 and on. I didn't really include some of the more recent, like current jazz musicians. These are kind of the big names from when jazz was in its heyday, right? So Miles Davis, we already talked about it. He's right here. He's a trumpet player. Louis Armstrong, another one. Actually, I think I have this poster in my classroom. He came before Miles Davis. Different type of jazz that he does. He is also a singer. But he's also a trumpet player and singer, Louis Armstrong. Benny Goodman, he's a clarinet player. He also directed his own jazz orchestra, along with Duke Ellington. We talked about him a little bit, piano player. He directed his jazz orchestra. He had his own orchestra. Billie Holiday is a very famous jazz singer. You should check out some of her music. I really enjoy her singing a lot. Charlie Parker over here, saxophone. Then we have Glenn Miller, trombone player. He also had his own jazz orchestra he directed. Ella Fitzgerald, who is another famous jazz singer. And then Art Blakey over here is a drummer. So I tried to include musicians that had different instruments to kind of show you all those. And there's so many more. There would be no way I could list all of them in this presentation. So that's about all I have for you. Again, this is just kind of an overview. Didn't go too in depth. If you want to do some more research, like I said last week or the week before, go for it. This stuff is very interesting. If you find a type of jazz that you found interesting, look that up. Look up some more music from that type of jazz. But yeah, I have a quiz that you need to fill out. It's only a couple of questions long, so please make sure that you do that. All right, and make sure that you check out every day. Most days I'm going to try to post a video of a musician or a group on the Google Classroom for you to check out as well. So that's all I have for you, middle school. Have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you later.